We will make America great again.
Recent rumors about the US annexing Canada have sparked widespread attention. These statements stem primarily from former US President Donald Trump's repeated remarks. Trump previously posted a map on social media showing a merged US and Canada, calling Canada America's 51st state, which triggered extensive discussion and controversy. Furthermore, during meetings with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Trump reportedly floated the idea of incorporating Canada into the US, further fueling speculation about this issue. These remarks have led to debates over the potential feasibility of such a plan and its implications for the future of US military, political, and economic strategies. In this analysis, we will explore the possibility and impact of this rumor from political, economic, and military perspectives. Welcome to BlackRock Hong Kongers, your go-to channel for in-depth discussions on international politics and global crises. Stay tuned as we uncover the truths behind the headlines. Like, share, and subscribe to join our community of critical thinkers. The possibility of the US annexing Canada involves numerous challenges, including sovereignty, international law, and domestic and international political dynamics. Canada is a federal, independent nation whose sovereignty and territorial integrity explicitly safeguarded under its Constitution, the Constitution Act, 1982. Canada's parliamentary democracy and constitutional monarchy differ significantly from the US's presidential federal system. If the US were to attempt annexation, it would require widespread approval from the Canadian Parliament, all provincial governments, and possibly even a national referendum. However, the vast majority of Canadians have a strong consensus for maintaining independence, as evidenced in historical elections and referenda. For example, during the 1995 Quebec independence referendum, the Canadian federal government successfully united other provinces to counter separatism, demonstrating its ability to defend national integrity. Canada's multicultural policies and bilingual system are also central to its national identity, which does not align with the US's more homogenized cultural model. Canada's stance on Arctic sovereignty highlights its commitment to territorial integrity. Canada has long asserted its sovereignty over Arctic territories, especially in the face of competition from the US and other nations seeking to protect its geopolitical and economic interests. This dedication to independence and resource control demonstrates Canada's firm resolve to maintain its territory. Moreover, US constitutional constraints, such as Article 4 Section 3, stipulate that admitting new states requires the consent of both Congress and the new territory. Considering Canada's size, population, and economic structure, integrating it as a single state or multiple states would face immense resistance. Threats to Canada's territorial integrity could also provoke severe geopolitical reactions. As a member of the Commonwealth, Canada's nominal head of state is the British monarch. While the Commonwealth is largely symbolic, any US threat to Canadian sovereignty could prompt diplomatic and economic countermeasures from the UK and other member nations. Under Article 4 of the United Nations Charter, nations are prohibited from using or threatening force against the sovereignty of another country. Annexation without international recognition would be seen as a grave challenge to global order, potentially leading to sanctions or military intervention. Both the US and Canada are NATO members, and NATO's mission is to safeguard its members' territorial integrity. Any US attempt to infringe on Canada's sovereignty could be viewed as a violation of NATO values, damaging its credibility and influence worldwide. Within the US, support for annexing Canada is also limited. On many social issues, such as gun control, universal healthcare, and environmental policy, Canada significantly differs from the US. These differences make it unlikely for Congress or voters to accept Canada as part of the US. Although Canada has a substantial economy, developing its remote regions and maintaining its infrastructure would require enormous investments. For instance, the underdeveloped Arctic areas would become a significant fiscal burden. Some US factions might fear that Canada's multiculturalism and left-leaning policies could disrupt America's political and cultural structure, exacerbating internal divisions. Even if some political forces supported annexation, the potential consequences could be disastrous. Forced annexation could lead to fragmentation or civil war in Canada, with increased demands for independence in regions like Quebec. Resistance at the federal level would severely damage US-Canada relations. International economic sanctions might intensify the US's economic difficulties and weaken the global standing of the US dollar. Forced annexation could also spark global geopolitical turmoil. NATO could face internal divisions, and allies' trust in the US would plummet. Additionally, rival powers like China and Russia might exploit the situation to undermine US global leadership, escalating security threats or military confrontations. From a political perspective, the idea of the US annexing Canada is neither realistic nor likely to gain domestic or international support. This rumor is more likely a rhetorical tactic used by certain political forces to draw attention than a feasible policy proposal.
They'd pay lower taxes. They have virtually no military. They have a very small military. They pay less than 1%. They're about the lowest payer in NATO. They're supposed to pay much more. They haven't been paying. They have a lot of problems.
On the vast expanse of the North American continent, two nations stand as guardians side by side. The United States, symbolized by the eagle with its unmatched global military power, and Canada, represented by the maple leaf, a symbol of peace and stability. Despite facing similar threats, their military styles differ significantly, yet their collaboration exemplifies the complementarity of strength and wisdom. In 1958, under the shadow of the Cold War, the US and Canada jointly established the North American Aerospace Defense Command (NORAD), marking the beginning of their military cooperation. This multinational organization focuses on protecting North American airspace, leveraging the US's advanced radar technology and Canada's expertise in the Arctic. With climate change making the Arctic a new strategic frontier, Canada's experience in polar operations combined with US high-tech equipment has significantly enhanced their influence in the region. This cooperation is evident in joint military exercises. For instance, Canadian soldiers drive snow vehicles across icy plains, working alongside US B-52 bombers to simulate intercepting hypothetical threats from the Arctic. The US provides heavy firepower and command capabilities, while Canada focuses on rapid response troop deployment. However, this partnership is not without challenges. The global strategies of the US sometimes conflict with Canada's military policies, which emphasize peacekeeping operations. This requires both nations to find balance in their collaboration. With technological advancements, they are also strengthening cooperation in cybersecurity and space to counter threats from Russia and China. In conclusion, US-Canada military cooperation is a story of strength, wisdom, and compromise. Through trust and collaboration, the two nations jointly safeguard North American security. If the US and Canada were to merge, it would drastically alter their military landscape. The US's formidable military power, combined with Canada's polar expertise, would form a more potent military force. For example, in the Arctic, such integration would fuse US advanced technology with Canada's expertise in polar operations, significantly enhancing defensive capabilities. Military bases in both countries could be optimized, further bolstering overall defense. However, this integration is not merely the sum of their strengths. Differences in military strategies and policies could pose challenges. The US focuses on global military actions, while Canada prioritizes peacekeeping and humanitarian missions. Reconciling these differences would be a significant challenge. Additionally, Canada's conservative stance on nuclear weapons contrasts sharply with the US's vast nuclear arsenal. Post-integration, managing nuclear weapon deployment and use would involve complex political and ethical issues. Defense budgets and resource allocation would also need reassessment. The US's enormous defense spending contrasts with Canada's relatively modest budget, balancing military power while ensuring economic sustainability would be a major concern. Cultural integration would present another challenge. The Canadian military emphasizes equality and diversity, whereas the US military places greater emphasis on discipline and hierarchy. Promoting cultural fusion while maintaining military cohesion would be a critical task for leadership. In summary, while military strength would be greatly enhanced through integration, strategic alignment, nuclear management, resource allocation, and cultural integration would require careful handling. If the US and Canada choose to maintain military independence, this would result in a mix of advantages and disadvantages. As a sovereign nation, Canada would retain the ability to craft its military policies based on its own interests, focusing on peacekeeping missions and humanitarian efforts, while preserving its independent stance in international affairs. However, in the face of global threats, Canada's reliance on allied cooperation, especially with the US, would remain crucial, particularly for countering non-traditional security threats like terrorism and cyber attacks. The long-standing military cooperation between the US and Canada ensures the defense of North American airspace and intelligence sharing against aerial threats. However, differences in military strategies and resource investments may limit the effectiveness of this collaboration. For instance, in the Arctic, a region of high strategic value, Canada seeks to enhance its military presence, but must depend on US support due to resource constraints. Maintaining military independence allows Canada to deploy forces according to its own needs, but also confronts challenges posed by limited resources. In a complex global security environment, Canada must modernize its military and strengthen cooperation with the US to address emerging threats. By remaining independent, the military cooperation and independence of the two nations complement one another. For Canada, the key challenge lies in maintaining security with limited resources while ensuring effective collaboration with the US. This balance is both a strategic consideration and the cornerstone of North America's security framework.
I say from the standpoint of the United States, we're subsidizing Canada $200 and $250 billion a year. We have massive deficits. They've taken about 20% of our car business. I'd rather do it here. We could put tariffs on. We don't have tariffs on them yet, but that will happen. But they've taken about 20% of our car business. I'd rather have it done in Detroit or have it done in South Carolina or any other state that does cars, and we have a lot of them. We don't need Canada for that. We don't need Canada for lumber because we have big forests that we have, not utilized. In some cases, they're protected, which I can take that protection off. And you take down a tree and you grow a better tree. That's, pretty common. But we don't need anything. We don't need their fuel. We don't need their energy. We don't need their oil and gas. We don't need anything that they have. And I said to Trudeau, I said, why are we subsidizing you $200 and $250 billion a year? He said, I really don't know. And I said, well, I don't know either. I said, what would happen to Canada if we didn't? He said Canada would be obliterated if that happened.
From an economic perspective, further analysis reveals that the economic interactions between the United States and Canada are deeply interconnected and highly complementary. Based on trade agreements and existing frameworks of cooperation, political unification, however, could introduce greater economic risks and costs rather than enhancing benefits. The United States and Canada are among the largest bilateral trading partners in the world, a relationship safeguarded by the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, formerly the North American Free Trade Agreement NAFTA. The following key points highlight the complementary nature of their bilateral economies. Canada is the largest energy supplier to the US, exporting oil, natural gas, and electricity. Alberta's oil sands and Quebec's hydroelectric power are crucial for US energy stability. These resource exports operate efficiently through existing agreements and infrastructure, such as the Keystone 40 pipeline, without the need for political unification. The two nations share highly integrated supply chains, particularly in industries like automotive, aerospace, and agricultural machinery. For example, US automobile manufacturing relies on Canadian-produced components and vice versa. This mutual dependence makes the current trade framework the optimal solution rather than political integration. Canada's vast farmlands and the US's advanced agricultural technology from a stable food supply chain. Canada exports significant quantities of wheat, meat, and dairy products, while the US provides agricultural machinery and technological support. This mutually beneficial model does not require further consolidation to thrive. Despite the high degree of economic complementarity, political unification could pose several economic challenges. Canada has a more comprehensive welfare system, offering universal healthcare and generous social benefits. If the US were to absorb Canada, these high-cost welfare programs could become a financial burden on the US federal government. For example, Canadian federal healthcare spending accounts for approximately 10% of its GDP, whereas the US healthcare system primarily relies on private insurance. This disparity would create substantial fiscal pressure. Canada uses the Canadian dollar CAD, while the US uses the US dollar USD. In the event of unification, the CAD would likely be replaced by the USD. However, the CAD's value often fluctuates with natural resource prices, creating different patterns of volatility compared to the USD. This lack of alignment in monetary policy could lead to economic instability. Although the two countries have complementary economies, certain industries such as manufacturing and agriculture may face intensified competition. American workers could experience greater employment pressure due to the inclusion of Canadian workers, while Canada might see its local small and medium-sized enterprises oppressed by the dominance of American corporations. Even if a merger were successful, the long-term costs from an economic perspective could far outweigh the benefits. The infrastructure in northern Canada is relatively underdeveloped. If a merger were to occur, the US would need to invest heavily in these regions, including the construction of transportation, communication, and energy facilities. However, the economic returns from these areas could be extremely limited. The legal systems of Canada and the US differ significantly in areas such as intellectual property, labor laws, and environmental regulations. If the two countries were to merge, these differences could lead to frequent trade disputes and economic frictions, increasing operational costs. The existing framework for cooperation between Canada and the US already maximizes the advantages of their economic complementarities, as evidenced by the following factors, which suggest that political unification is unnecessary. The US accounts for over 75% of Canadian exports, while Canada is one of the largest import markets for the US. This mutual dependency has promoted economic stability and has not been weakened by the existence of national borders. Maintaining independence allows both countries to tailor their economic policies to their domestic needs. For instance, Canada can adjust its export policies based on its resource characteristics, while the US focuses on technological innovation and its global leadership in the financial sector. From an economic perspective, the two countries have already maximized their economic benefits through existing trade agreements and cooperative frameworks. Political unification would not significantly enhance economic efficiency, but would instead bring a series of structural challenges and cost risks. This notion seems more like political rhetoric than a viable choice based on economic realities. A comprehensive analysis from political, economic, and military perspectives reveals that the notion of the United States annexing Canada is entirely lacking in realistic foundation. Such claims are more likely strategic rhetoric by political figures aimed at achieving specific political objectives, rather than representing genuine policy intentions. In the Trump's Make America Great Again Dream series, topics ranging from Greenland and the Panama Canal to the annexation of Canada are analyzed through political, military, and economic lenses. The conclusion is clear. Trump's true ambitions likely lie in gaining control over Greenland and the Panama Canal. However, achieving these goals would undoubtedly face significant challenges as Trump prepares to officially assume the presidency of the United States. We shall wait and see how the story unfolds. Thank you for watching BlackBlock Hong Kong's Global Insight Network. Like, share, and subscribe for in-depth analyses on international politics and critical issues. Explore these videos next and join the conversation for a more insightful world.